Hello, mate. We're still in Atlanta.
I'm loving it. Day two
of
the conference. Day 3, or we lost count. We actually were saying we can't work out how long we've been here.
What is it about travelling and doing stuff like this? You don't lose track of time. Yeah. You lose track of place. Your place in the world. No idea. No idea.
But I'm ready for some banter in Atlanta.
Oh no! Why is it taking a 6 podcasts? to get banter in Atlanta.
Banter in Atlanta. That's what it is. Yeah. Good evening last night.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah,
nice to get together. Bunch of
the bits I can remember.
So you're memory like a steel trap. So we're all good.
Memory like what's
steel trap? Isn't that right?
I've never heard that saying before.
Well, let's pretend it's a saying. It might be a saying.
Explain it to me.
It's a steel trap. You don't let anything go. It's all in there.
Oh, God, gotcha. Yeah. I was thinking about like one of those like animal trap things that kind of trap you.
I don't know what kind of trap it is. Of course, it doesn't actually work that well. You have to go right past it to get caught by it. It's not even if it is a metaphor, it's a bad one.
Yeah, no, I'm reading a series of books at the moment, and they have demon traps in them. Ooh. Which, I don't know where I'm going with this, but
are they grown-up books?
No, they're not.
They've got pictures.
They're written for that age, between like children and adulthood age.
Apparently, they now market a whole bunch of books that aren't YA, young adult, because they sell better.
I'm entirely hooked.
Lee Davis and Gwilym Roberts are the 2 IPs in a pod, and you are listening to a podcast on intellectual property, brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys.
Well done for getting to the bands.
We got the bands.
Should we get our guest on?
Yes.
People don't know how we record this, do we? But we're actually sat opposite one another for probably the first time ever.
Could be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always used to looking at you because you're on a Zoom screen.
But it's a bit like Zoom, isn't it?
Yes, but yeah. Except I can't.
Yeah. Good.
I can't turn you off.
I can duck under the table at any point.
Nicole, hello. How are you?
Hello. Welcome to Atlanta.
Thank you. It's a lovely place.
It is a lovely
Olympic Park. I love the aquarium.
Yes.
Really love the aquarium.
This is a good time of the year to visit. It's not too hot.
Does it get hotter?
It gets, for you all, yes.
Oh, wow.
We'll go to about 30.
I would say it is too hot.
We'll get up to about 30 Celsius for you all, which is in the 90s Fahrenheit.
Thank you for doing Celsius. We can't do Fahrenheit.
I know.
Yeah, I used to be able to do it a long time ago, but I just can't do it in my mind.
Well, they don't start at 0, so you have to subtract and divide and
32 and then divide
for the 7th or something. It's weird.
Yeah. Welcome to the podcast. So lovely that you joined us.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
So tell us a bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Yes, my name is Nicole Morris, and I am a professor of practice at Emory University School of Law, which is here in Atlanta. And my background is I'm a patent attorney. So I had the lovely pleasure of meeting Gwilym a few years back and attended a few of the webinars for the firm, which has been quite lovely learning about European patent law. I practiced patent law for about 13 years before I came over to the university to start teaching. And I teach doctrinal courses, for example, trade secrets I'm teaching this fall. I've just finished teaching an intellectual property survey course, which is a little slather of all 4 IP doctrines, patents, trademarks, copyright, and trade secrets. And my main role at the law school is I run our innovation program. So it's focused on teaching law students how to think like an entrepreneur, how to sort of critically think about the legal implications of technology. So we finished a course this spring where we did a deep dive on facial recognition technology.
Oh, wow.
And the implications of that from a privacy perspective, but just more broadly, if you are working as counsel for a company who wants to launch facial recognition tech, what are the regulatory hurdles? What are the things you should think about in terms of designing, auditing, data security issues, in addition to data privacy, which is separate. So I have a fun job. I do a lot of
just grab one thing that you said, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll let Gwilym steer, because he's going to be all over this. You said you teach entrepreneurship to lawyers.
Correct.
So let me cut that in 2 ways. First of all, is teaching it to lawyers different to teaching it to people who would be entrepreneurs? So is it about understanding the mindset of the entrepreneur?
Yeah, so it is a mindset. It's mostly a mindset framework in terms of thinking like an owner, but also more importantly, thinking about the business value. Like, what
Gotcha.
is it that you're trying to do?
So it's not. So you're not teaching entrepreneurship. It's getting inside the minds of an entrepreneur.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I actually, for a few semesters, I taught on like an entrepreneurship law kind of course where we went through case law, looking at like different business sort of failures or contract failures or things like that, intellectual property opportunities. And that was fun, but it felt a little bit like a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So I sort of scrapped the course in and of itself and moved more into this like flexible model of like, let's bring in new sort of either business models, technology, or modes of doing something, and then put a legal framework around that, and then use that how to teach.
So cool. I'd love to do that. I'd love to be a student. That's something.
Come on. We can just zoom you in.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The pandemic has taught us how to. It doesn't matter where you are.
That's how we met.
That's exactly right.
We've never actually met before.
Just
in
as
the real
long
world.
as you're okay to stay up kind of late, we can bring you in.
So I'm fascinated by this. Do all entrepreneurs think the same then? Is there a common?
No. That's the beauty of it as well, right? So it depends on your business. For highly regulated businesses, you tend to be more conservative in your thinking. Managing risks looks a lot different versus like if you have a software or app related, more consumer facing product, your product life cycles will be quicker. Like you're just more agile, I would say.
Yeah.
So I bring in a lot of like business school kind of concepts.
So not being the lawyer in the room, not being a patent attorney or anything like that. I get to ask the really stupid questions.
There's no stupid questions.
Just indulge me for a moment. That kind of nexus, that relationship between entrepreneurs and patent attorneys, we've never really explored this on the podcast before because we've never had anybody who has an expertise there. Is there a balance of risk equation in there somewhere? Are entrepreneurs have a greater appetite for risk, and that the attorney needs to kind of like balance that and bring it back?
Yeah, so like I'll bring it to an analogy that I think most people are familiar with, this television show in the U.S. called Shark Tank.
Yeah, so Dragon's Den.
Whenever you go on the show, you're trying to get funding for your business, right?
Yeah.
So if you're the lawyer for the teams of entrepreneurs running through Shark Tank, right, you want to make sure your client is really focused on, they want to get funding, right? So they have to, in their message to the sharks, have a value prop. Like, what is your value for doing this sort of entrepreneurial endeavor? But as a lawyer, like where you really add value, so to speak, is what intellectual property rights can you secure? How can you protect the business or the innovation such that it creates a competitive advantage for you, that gets you the customers, that gets you the revenue, that will get a return on investment for the sharks. Right? So the way I try to frame it for the students is you're never an expert. Like you're not an SME, subject matter expert, on what the business is, but you really have to be a good sort of interviewer and ask a lot of questions, make sure you're kicking the tires, so to speak, that there's some there to the product, to the business model, to everything that the entrepreneur is putting in front of you. And then you need to wrap that in good contracting, wrap that in patents, if it's a patent eligible subject matter, branding. You can think about trademarks, if it's something that copyright protection would, be best suited for. But you need to figure out where that innovation or that product fits best, and then advise the team and the entrepreneur how they can best sort of navigate that.
You want to stick with this for a moment? Because
I've got a question on this topic.
I'm entirely fascinated by
before
this.
I get to my questions.
Maybe we should do this podcast in a part 2, like part 2.
I'm a bit of, so we call it Dragon's Den in the UK. Is our equivalent of Shark Tank.
Oh, I love it, Dragon's Den.
Yeah. I don't know which came first. I don't know which seeded which, but
right.
And I think early on in the show, I don't think that they were terribly clued up on IP for Dragons. Yeah, and I know that our intellectual property office in the UK did quite a lot of work with the program makers to kind of get the IP element in there. So now when I hear them ask about, so have you got IP? Is it protected? I still don't know if they really, the Dragons really understand the questions that they're asking. And So where I'm going with this is, for the first time in the UK, just in the last few months, we've got banks that will now lend against intangible assets.
Oh, yeah,
So they're starting to look at businesses and say, actually, your IP
is your asset.
has a monetary value in as much as it has that sort of non-tangible value. Is that something that you're seeing over here?
Yeah, so we've been seeing that for years over here, investments in intellectual property. So banks will take a financial interest that you file with the patent office. So, JP Morgan has a financial interest in this IP asset that they have to disclose as part of the government filing. So that's occurred here for decades. What we're seeing more as well are entities popping up to finance litigation.
Yeah.
So I was
at
an event actually in. It sounds really pretentious. I'll say at a city in Europe, as opposed to saying the city because
we European.
I think it's called the Leaders League is the conference group. It was in Paris last July. Yeah. And I was on a panel talking exactly about litigation financing. And there was a chap, I'll use that, from London who came over and said it's very big now in the UK where organizations or entities are funding litigation hoping to get a return on investment if they're able to...
The one big win.
Exactly, successfully sue on a patent or a trademark or whatever it is. So that, I think, is now gaining a lot of traction here in the U.S. as well. But it's hard, right? So there was a trend for banks for a while to hire patent attorneys or hire, like, PhD or folks who have expertise in certain technology.
Yeah.
So when they're looking at making an investment, whether it's to take a financial interest or to fund a litigation, they would know, are we on the right side of the V? Are we going to get our money back, right? I don't know how much of that is happening now, but I know for a while, law students or PhD students I'd run across would tell me, oh yeah, I'm working with this investment bank company. I'm like, tell me about that. And they're like, yeah, I look at technologies and help the bank assess whether or not it's a good investment strategy.
Well, we're always a few years behind the States on all this kind of thing. So we tend to watch what's happening over here and think, right, that's coming to Europe soon. And as an incidental, the new court in the UPC, that new court in Europe, that's changed the game for litigation funding because all of a sudden you're suing for a market of 400 million people and the damages start making sense in terms of the cost of litigation.
I didn't think of that as an implication. That is a great point.
So it's cool. And in fact, as a result, we've done some interesting podcasts with some people concerned about the NPE threat that's going to get attached to that. And there's the LOCKS network, I can name it, License on Termination. They're now in Europe quite strongly saying join our network because, it's all come from the States. The problems, if I may, that's come from the States and the solutions also coming from the States. So we just have these things happen.
Yeah, just sit and watch, take some good notes.
But actually just on the entrepreneur thing, it's, I remember hearing, I think it might have been the American president said that one of the issues with the French is they don't have a word for entrepreneur, which I love. But apart from that, it is a really strong culture over here. We hear the whole the risk-taking thing and the entrepreneur thing. We don't have a course in the UK.
No, exactly.
Where you wouldn't call yourself an entrepreneur. It's just not a kind of... It's a thing you might turn into one day without really realising it, rather than actual kind of... career choice, studying it, learning it. But I think I hear again that in the States... One of the reasons your businesses are so successful is because you're willing for businesses to fail as part of the learning process. Is that a trope or is that a real thing?
No, it's called fail fast. There's a couple of lean startup, a couple of sort of categorical terms that we have to capture this notion that you start off with an idea for your business and you sort of go as hard as you can, as fast as you can to make it successful. But if it's not working out, you have to have the agility and sort of the wherewithal and probably courage to either let that business fail, like close it, shut it down, or pivot, right? If you see another opportunity that you didn't really think of in the beginning, but it looks like it could be something that you should make a go of, then you pivot to that next thing. Not everyone has the stomach for that, though. So there's They're folks who are serial entrepreneurs because they understand this whole fail fast, lean startup mentality of this isn't working out. I'm going to scrap this business and move on to something else. And others who just become, emotionally attached probably to the business idea and can't let it go. And by the time, things aren't working out, it's too late, right? Either all the money's gone, there's not enough capital to sort of pivot to something else. People or investors have kind of lost faith in you. I applaud entrepreneurs because, while I sort of understand the strategic implications and think of it as like a game board, like I understand where the pieces are and what myself, I don't think I have the stomach right to do that. I'm like, oh my God, we can barely make payroll. Like that for me would be like
scary, isn't it?
Yeah, super stressful. Like I would need to balance my own sort of anxiety about that with someone else who could be like, it's okay. No, I've got some ideas on how we can manage it. You know what I mean? Like I think it takes a team. So like those solo entrepreneurs, I applaud them because I really do think it takes multiple mindsets, right? To sort of get this, inertia, different people providing different inputs and point of views to kind of keep the business going because it's really, really hard. It's really hard.
I mean, this wasn't the direction this podcast.
I know. It's organic and it's fabulous.
I was actually going to step back a little bit though. You said you were a patent attorney for 13 years. I think you said something like that. But then what drove the move over to academia?
I probably had my own life disruption in a way that wasn't planned. So I was on the law firm life track. And then the financial market crash here in the U.S. in 2008 was the first time I was ever laid off from a job. Right. So I get laid off from my law firm. Everyone gets laid off from all different sectors. But I just started picking up like just little jobs. And I moved to a smaller firm here in town that did a lot of corporate work. And it was still an IP. So I was grateful for that. So in working with that firm, afforded me an opportunity to then interview and go in-house with a corporate opportunity here in town. And then a few years later, from that corporate opportunity, I got laid off again. So it's like this cycle of layoffs. It's almost like a cold. It's like once you catch it, once it's like, now I'm susceptible. But
inoculated. You should be the other way around.
Yes, no. But I was smart the second time around in terms of thinking about what other career options would be available. So while I was working in-house, I started as an adjunct at the university. And the nice thing about corporate layoffs, you leave with a severance. So I had a little bit of time to kind of figure out like what the next thing was. And I just, as an adjunct, happened to talk with a law prof at Emory about like next sort of, legal jobs. And he mentioned that there was one of his colleagues had announced she was going to retire. So they would be looking for, a new professor in this role. And I knew nothing about the program or anything. And I was like, I do think I'm perfect for it though, just given all of my patchwork of experiences. Yeah, and I applied and I got the job. So it was not like on my radar, right, to go.
Those accidental kind of openings are the best, aren't they? They really are. Can I just say something about language though? Because we were talking about it earlier. So even the language that you use in America and you've been using now. So you talk about being laid off, which sounds. It doesn't sound entirely negative. There's something else coming.
That's right.
Whereas we would say, I've been made redundant. So I've been made redundant.
That's a horrible phrase.
That's how you guys describe layoffs. I've been made redundant.
I've ended.
Exactly. Oh, I was thinking you were going to say sacked, but sacked means fired.
No, redundant. Yeah, I'm redundant. Me as a person.
No, you're not.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Back to you, sir.
No, that's a really interesting observation. What a horrible word. And what we say now, that we don't say the person's redundant, we say the role's redundant.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any difference at all. It's still horrible.
It still feels the same. Yeah.
So it sounds like Emory's a very forward-looking place. This course And we have nothing like it in the UK I'm aware of.
Yeah, so, I will say this. I added sort of my oomph to it with this Think Like an Entrepreneur. Because when I examined the framework of the program, and we've evolved since then, so let me just take you back a few steps. When I joined in 2015, the program is based off of a National Science Foundation grant, which combined graduate students in law, business, and engineering. Yeah. So we partnered, or were partnering at the time, with the Georgia Tech. So the Georgia Institute of Technology, which is a world-class institution here in Atlanta. Fantastic, PhD programs in engineering. So we would bring on a PhD student, a business student from Georgia Tech, and a law student from Emory, and they would work in a team with the basis of their teamwork being sort of like a startup-like sort of enterprise. And the technology was the PhD student's thesis. So you're working on nanotechnology to do whatever, and can we make a go of this? Can we make a business out of it? So in my mind, I'm like, well, that's what entrepreneurs do, right? I thought of it as teaching these entrepreneurial principles to lawyers because it was baked into the framing of the program and the course. In 2022, we sort of dissolved the partnership with Georgia Tech for all valid reasons, right? They were moving in a different direction with their business school program. We had, for a couple of years prior, I think COVID and quarantining had a lot to do with it as well, had ceased to include a PhD student in the team sort of basis. And, legal tech started becoming kind of a thing. So from my perspective, for students who were coming in from the Emory Law side, we needed an opportunity to get them more engaged with what new tech platforms were going to be part of the legal industry. So we sort of had an amicable, dissolution. And at the time we were talking about splitting up, I did a podcast. So these podcasts have been golden for me. I did a podcast in COVID, and a guy from the Department of Energy happened to be listening and said, this woman understands technology transfer and tech commercialization. We need to infuse this sort of strategy thinking with our labs. And they approached me about partnering with the National Nuclear Security Agency, which is part of DOE, and all of the national labs. So in the U.S., the Department of Energy runs like our government innovation labs. Okay. So I'm pretty sure you have something similar in the UK. I don't know how you structure it. But the U.S. has about 12 different, maybe a little bit more, but about 12 different labs that function like mini universities. So they have PhD scientists working on all kinds of crazy new tech laser stuff, harnessing energy from the sun and creating it to do this. And a lot of the applications tend to go into military uses, which makes sense. But then sometimes there are other things that are sitting on the shelf. They're like, this could probably be a successful commercial product in the consumer or private sector. So like LASIK, if I can get the word out, LASIK surgery was actually sort of a laser sort of tool that they were using in the government that someone was like, I'm sure we could use it in other places. And eventually it became used on your eye. Safely and successfully. So we partnered with them, and we've now been working with the lab for 3 years. And it's sort of like a consulting project. So there's a call for proposals where the scientists will submit projects. The law students will then partner with the sort of lead scientists at the particular lab. We do a technology description, learn more about it, and then get from the lab what they would like for us to focus on, like, what market or industry analysis you want. If intellectual property tends to be sort of a variable that's important to you, let's look at who your competitors are, who's filing in this. I use patents as a proxy for competitive advantage. So you understand who is really in your tech sector based on who's filing, right? Because it's important to them. And it's been really incredible for the students to see, like, again, early stage technology, but what's important in terms of the next wave of innovation. So climate is kind of a big theme right now for a lot of the innovation they're working on in carbon capture or things related to that. So it's been really fun.
So you've had an amazing professional journey, haven't you? Do you miss the hands-on law side?
I do in some interesting ways because I think there's some really fun stuff happening, particularly with AI. You'll read different cases, and, I don't have the same sort of collegial base.
Yeah.
Kind of go down the hall and be like, so what did you make of that new Supreme Court? Because the students are just like, what? My faculty colleagues are like, not everyone's into it. So from that perspective, it's nice. So I try to stay involved, like through podcasts like this or going to different attorney conferences where you get to hear like what's top of mind for people and what they are, not so much keeping folks up at night, which is a popular phrase, but what they are worried about, concerned about, or spending time, thinking about, or how they can advance the different needs of the legal department based on what's going on in the law.
Cool. You do sound like an entrepreneur to me.
Yeah.
I have to say, I did this podcast and then the government got in touch and now we're doing all the laboratories. That's pretty cool.
I just grab all these opportunities as they come up.
You know what? I am definitely sort of like an open to hearing what you have to say kind of person. So it's like, but I think that I have a collaborative spirit, right? Like that's what I realized in teaching, and I think that collaborative efforts make the best sort of tool, product, thing, whatever it is you're trying to do. And so I embrace collaboration. Like I don't have all the answers. I don't know all the things, and I'm okay with that, right? But by talking, learning, being open to collaborating, reaching out to someone else and be like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? I think fuels my sort of passion and inner, spirit animal in terms of I'm learning something new, and expands my network. So I'm able to be like, oh, now, just off of that one-off chance, 3 years ago, Gwilym, like we've literally stayed connected, even if it's just through email or a webinar here and there, or now a podcast. And I love that. No, I truly do.
Got to keep those connections. And we did some panels. I guess it was deep lockdown, wasn't it? So
yeah.
It was a breath of fresh air just to be talking to people from different countries about different things. Because we were, I don't know how locked in you were, but we couldn't go out.
No, you guys were really on lockdown. So, in the U.S. it was different, right? Like in Atlanta, we were like, after about 3 months, everyone was over COVID. And like the severe lockdown restriction. No, seriously. By the end of that summer, people were like, forget about it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to keep my mask on around you. But in the UK, you all didn't lift restrictions for a good year and a half. Yeah. So when we were, I think it was January 21, right?
Yeah.
We were kind of moving and shaking. Vaccine rollouts were happening here. And you were like, I can't leave my flat.
No.
And I thought, okay.
That was a weird time.
Yeah.
And I think, I seem to recall the webinar we did was one about what we were calling EDI. Mm-hmm. I think the term at the moment is equity.
Yeah. So the name of the conference we did was Advancing Equity and Innovation. And we were coming off of the heels of a lot of sort of focus on racial inequity in the U.S., and I wanted to sort of tilt that focus to just inequity in terms of the innovation pipeline, legal work in innovation. So that would be patents, inventors of color, women inventors, attorneys, and there were scholars and others sort of working in that space right around the same time. So it was quite fortuitous for us to sort of like theme the conference around that and have like data from people who were like working on statistics and other things to discuss. So that was great.
We talked about a few of these topics on various podcasts in the past. It's been a very interesting one about women inventors.
Yeah.
And how they did some amazing stats. And obviously the numbers aren't great at all. There's a complete disparity. But that really chilling stat that the most surprising thing was that women-only teams was incredibly low.
Really low, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sub 4%, something like that, from memory.
That kind of thing. But I love when you need that data sometimes.
You need the data to wake you up, right? To the gaps, right? Yeah. I think, people are hesitant to talk about it. And it's not meant to shame anybody, right? Like, it's really meant to sort of put a spotlight on the gaps So those of us who are interested in closing the gaps know what we need to work towards, right? I think some folks are not interested in closing the gap, so it makes them uncomfortable in talking about it. But for women-only teams, it's hard. One of the sort of, I think, advantageous things coming out of the pandemic is going back to entrepreneurship, people have just decided that they're not going to wait for someone to tap them or hire them or whatever, and they're just going to create sort of the world that they want to see, whether that's starting a business, hiring a team that looks like them, hiring more women or people of color or people who are underrepresented in spaces that will advance the causes or business ideas that they want. So that's been, I think, a positive.
And do you have a lot of organisations dedicated to it, or is it just various people making individual effort and getting together?
Yeah, it's spotty. I would say it's still pretty fragmented. There are a few. There's one, and I won't remember the name of the initiative coming out of the patent office. So two things. The director of the USPTO, Kathy Vidal, is very focused on raising awareness and increasing more participation from women inventors. And there's an initiative that the office has started to sort of take a look at that. And I'm part of a group called Invent Together that's also looking at that and trying to do more education, more awareness, offer some programs to get more underrepresented and women folks in the pipeline. So they can be inventors, they can be attorneys, whatever that might look like.
Yeah, we're lucky in the UK to have IP inclusive, which is kind of, it's like a clearinghouse. We all know, we go there first. If you have an idea, check if they're doing it before you kick off.
Yeah.
One thing I've always got a problem is, I love, obviously, please anyone do anything you can do to change stuff. But it upsets when you've got two people working in parallel on the same thing. Right. Get together.
And they don't know about it, right? That's even more upsetting.
or they know about it, but they're so precious about it being there.
That's exactly right. Not invented here. Let's call that syndrome, right? Like, no, we still want to plant our own flag. Yeah.
So I'm conscious of time. This podcast is rattling by, isn't it? And,
it's too interesting.
It's far too interesting.
I think we need a part two.
We definitely need a part two.
Let's put a pin in it. We're going to have a part two, folks. I don't know when, because these fellas are pretty busy, but
we can meet in Paris.
That's right. We can meet in Paris.
We can Zoom it. This is it's not going to be done in person, but
Paris is an option.
Yeah, but if Paris is still an option, don't worry.
My
hand is
ready. Let's do Paris then. Okay.
But you know what? It's on my bucket list. I got to get to London, so maybe we do it there. I've never been. I know.
We'll do it London then. We'll do London.
Sorry, I said that out loud. Sorry. Yes, I do need to get to London.
Come on over. Actually, we're doing a series of podcasts in a few days, like a couple of weeks, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a pub.
Yeah. We call it a pubcast.
Why can't I get invited to that?
You're invited.
All right.
Get there.
Deal.
Yeah.
Shall I try and bring us kind of towards the end then?
I think I've got a question.
I've got
closing question.
I've got a closing question. Let's have a closing question competition.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You go first.
Okay. Are we closing now? Is that what's happening?
Or should we carry on?
No, okay, let's do that. So, my closing, before we do this, context, Lee normally surprises me with a closing question inspired by something that's come up in the podcast. And normally I let him do it, and he's got one today. Sometimes you come up with the same one. We don't normally have a competition, but today you just said something, and I think we've got to explore it a little bit more. You mentioned your inner spirit animal.
Yes.
Is that yours?
No, that's not mine.
I put that down. The moment you said that, I thought, okay, we've got a closing question.Lee, what is your inner spirit animal?
What's mine? Oh no, and it never comes to me first.
I know. Tell me about it. It's tough.
Actually, it'd have to be a fish. I think it would have to be a fish. Only because, so I can't swim very well on top of the water.
Yeah.
Never learned to swim properly. Only taught myself. Once I get under the water, I'm in my element. Yeah?
Yeah.
Probably because I'm drowning. But but on that, I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, so you had to be a fish because I just love being underwater.
So Lee's a fisherman. I think just saying a fish won't do. I don't know what kind of fish.
Bass. Bass. Yeah. The kind of fish is very easy for me. This isn't like the American freshwater bass. This is a proper.
I don't know. I just love that you got very specific.
Yeah. The prince of the sea basses.
I should have said, what's your inner spirit fish? Actually.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So what is your inner spirit?
If I had to put an animal to it, that's a good one. So, Honestly, I don't know, but my zodiac sign is Leo, so I'm just gonna say lion.
That's cool.
Oh, it's cool.
Yeah,
I mean, your inner spirit animal is going to demolish his inner spirit.
I think so.
No, it's going to drown. The lion will drown.
Oh, there's that. That's true.
Catch me if you can.
That's true.
Gwilym,
And what about you?
what's
now?
yours?
After my behaviour last night, I think it's a lemming. Run straight towards the cliff and keep going. That's kind of what happened last night.
Yeah, we all do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was my question. Unusually, we're now going to have a question.
Yeah.
So
I was quite fascinated by the, and I've been thinking about it a little bit through the whole podcast, the accidental career trajectory. Yeah, when the world changes and you just go somewhere else. If you could engineer a career change, Gwilym.
Yeah, I was going first. You get time to think. Right?
Yeah.
This is your thinking time.
So if you, not an accidental one, but if you could retrace your steps and think on this particular kind of avenue, or this way instead, where would you be now if you did something entirely different?
I think I would be arranging gigs. When I was doing that quite a lot with the band, we had a band in my office.
No.
We called it the Black Eyed Peas.
Oh.
Black Eyed Peas.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
He's very proud.
I'm not quite proud of that. Anyway, but I used to go, and before we kind of had the band, I was going to the pubs, venues, saying I've got a band. And they said, yeah, have a gig. And they go to the band and say, I've got a gig, so we better get the band together. And it worked really well. And like the pub next to the office, the old Nick, I went for years to get me a free beer every time I went in because I was always organising gigs and people coming low level. I loved that, the satisfaction I got. And then being in the actual gig and everything too. But having made it all happen, I love that so much. I wish I could do that for a little bit. That's such good fun.
So that's yours now, Nicole. Where would you be?
You know, I think I would end up in the law for sure. I think I probably would have started sooner, but maybe not, because I've learned so much that's infused my wisdom in terms of not going straight to law school from undergrad. I think I'm sort of using hindsight. So the other thing I think I should have done is stick with engineering and gone into the tech sector. Like, I'm still kind of a geeky nerd.
You're an engineer at heart.
Yeah, if you peel back all the layers. And just sort of just double down and said, this tech thing will blow up. just stick with it. It's real. I think I might have done that.
As ever, that's a much more sensible answer than mine.
You have a creative passion outlet. Like the creative side is not for me.
I'm a music producer, Lemming. You're a lion engineer. It's a lot cooler. Lee?
Oh, so yeah, and mine connects. So I would cook, is what I would do. If I could have my time over again, I love cooking. I love it kind of with a passion. And I'd love to be a professional chef. That's where I'd be.
Would your signature dish also be your inner spirit?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, no, it would be. Yeah, fish is fish is absolutely what I love cooking, and I love cooking bass. So it kind of full circle.
That's a good one. I think I would almost echo that. That might be my retirement career.
Oh no, my retirement career is shelf stacking at B&Q. That's where I'm going.
You like that?
Yeah. I want to be the old man who bumbles around in B&Q, and people come over and ask, "Where's the size 4 screw?" or whatever it might be, and I want to know exactly where it is.
In this, do you get to drive a forklift truck?
Oh no, for sure. Yeah.
No, I've driven a forklift. That was one of my high school jobs. I worked at a convenience store, and in the back we would have pallets, and one day I was like, they would only. It sounds very sexist, but they would only let the guy. Sort of employees work it, and I'm like, I want to do this forklift. He's like, sure, the managers are here, and I was like, this is awesome.
I was once the proud owner of a forklift driving license. So
you're so talented.
I know. So it's so much in the backlog.
He literally hasn't mentioned plumbing. I've just had to say it because we all get his plumbing career in.
I'm a plumber.
You are.
Yeah. Mechanical services engineer, please. As we've got another engineer present.
Engineer, yes, love it. This has been lovely.
Oh, it's been so nice having you on. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
We're doing part 2, definitely.
And we're going to do a part 2.
All right, sounds great.
Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't know whether you're listening to this podcast because you're at INTA and you're listening to it for the first time, or whether you're one of our seasoned listeners, but however you've come to the podcast, if you've liked it, if you've enjoyed it, then leave us a review on your platform of choice, because then we can extend our listenership.
That's exactly how the Beatles broke America.
Was it?
Yeah, just it was all about reviews.
Are you John and my Yoko?
Yes. Perfect.